Can you hear that? I have got my laptop on Goodreads and it is literally yelling and screaming at the moment. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm bringing you the finale for my 2024 Advent Calendar Book Edition, featuring my Colour Me reading and book wrap-up for the month. Like I said, this is my last video in this series for 2024, and I have managed to read 8 books since my last update. Unfortunately, that means I'm still 10 books away from reaching my Goodreads reading goal of 35 books for the year 2024. But I think overall, I'm really happy with how this reading year has turned out. I have definitely read some interesting books, and I'm really hoping to delve more into my reading journey in 2025. But we'll just wrap up all 8 books I've read since last update, and I'll let you know if they are part of my Advent Calendar Book Edition, my Colour Me Reading Challenge, or just a book I've read towards my Goodreads goal. First up, I read Not Now, Not Ever, 10 Years On from the Misogyny Speech, edited by Julia Gillard. So Julia Gillard was the first woman Prime Minister in Australia. On October 9th, 2012, Julia Gillard stood up in front of everyone in Parliament House and gave the misogyny speech. This book is developed by Julia Gillard 10 years after that speech, and it's made up of a set of essays from different people talking about misogyny then and misogyny now, where they were when the speech was given, how that made them feel, what that meant for the world, what that meant for them. I decided to read this book because after reading Power Play by Julia Banks, I wanted to know more about politics here in Australia. I was in my early 20s when Julia Gillard gave this speech, and a lot of the book talks about where people were when they first heard the speech. And I am, on some levels, ashamed to say that I didn't know about this. I am Australian, I live in Australia, I'm a woman in Australia, and I would dare say that in some aspects I am a feminist, and I was not even really aware that this had happened. I was aware of the hate that Gillard received while she was Prime Minister, and I probably wouldn't have said she was the best Prime Minister, but I also think that she was really set up to fail from the start. I think having been on my side, on the side of the public and maybe the little bit of ignorant public in relation to politics, because politics, as I've previously said, were not really my thing. Having been on that side and now reading about it from the other side, it was a really eye-opening to get more information and see the effect this speech had on the world. I would also say I listened to this book via audiobook, and as being part of the audiobook, you are played the entire speech, though I'm not sure if it is written in the physical book. And if I had read it as a physical book rather than hearing how it actually played out in real life, I probably wouldn't have had the same emotive feels as I did hearing it in the audiobook. So I would recommend, if you have not heard the speech, to either look it up on YouTube, or if you're planning to read this book, I would say listen to it via audiobook to really get a feel for how this speech went down. After hearing this speech and listening to this book, I would say that probably the most disappointing aspect of this whole scenario is the fact that Tony Abbott became our 28th Prime Minister, while Julia Gillard was our 27th Prime Minister. So as much as this speech really did pull to the forefront the issues of misogyny within the political climate and also within Australia as a whole, history also shows that though things have probably slightly changed since then, he was literally made the next Prime Minister. So, and I think the fact that this is 10 years on from that whole scenario, and I don't think I would be remiss to say that not much has changed. It is worth reading this book, and it is worth maybe considering where we want to head as a society into the future, not just within politics. So as you can see, the cover as Not Now, Not Ever, 10 years on from the misogyny speech, is pink. I would also say that it is a light pink. So this book did go towards the light pink colour for my Colour Me Reading challenge. Following on from this, I was obviously feeling the feminist vibe, so I read Women Rising, The Forces That Hold Us Back, The Tools to Help Us Rise by Megan Dalla Kamina. I also listened to this via audiobook, and I guess as a reminder, I listen to majority of my audiobooks while I am driving. And I did give this book 4 stars. However, a month on from reading this book, I am slightly struggling to remember anything specific from it. I do remember there is a section in there that talks about women within business, and when there was a conference regarding women within business, and a male CEO, was asked to discuss as part of their panel, was asked to say what they thought women in business needed to do to move up in the organisation, and they discussed be more confident, which was then followed up by Dahlia Kamina for having her panel where she talked about how CEOs tend to say that you need to be more confident in yourself. And she does talk about a paradox between confidence and competence. It is a really interesting book, and now that I have just pulled it up on my Goodreads screen and I'm having a little read through the bio for it, it also talks about 13 archetypes which keep women striving for impossible standards. These archetypes include things like the perfectionist, the overachiever, the good girl, and the people pleaser. And all of us tend to fall into one of these archetypes, and it really heavily talks about the ins and outs of these archetypes, what we can do to unmask these archetypes and move forward. I think I would definitely note this book down as one I would like to reread, and potentially in a physical copy rather than audiobook, because though I did enjoy the audiobook, I did find that it was going over quite a lot of heavy detail and heavy information that sometimes I kind of zoned in and out of while driving. Hence why, though I know I enjoyed the book and gave it 4 stars, I did have trouble remembering exactly what it spoke about. So this is potentially one I will actually be looking to get in physical copy and reread, though I did enjoy it. And this book doesn't go towards any of my challenges. The next book I read was Almost Dead by Lisa Jackson, and pulling it up here on my Goodreads, I can actually now see that this is the second book in a series. However, having only read this book and not the first book, I would definitely say that this can be read as a standalone book. And it follows Sissy Chahil, who is in the midst of a separation and is faced by a terrible situation where she comes across her murdered grandmother and quickly learns that something sinister is happening, and people within her family are slowly getting picked off. and she is looking to be next. This is definitely a mystery thriller, and I did find at first it was a little bit of a hard slog, but as I got further into the storyline, I actually got really hooked on the mystery and the thriller and trying to figure out who was behind these terrible acts and what was going to happen to Sissy and her family. If you are a thriller fan, I would definitely recommend this book. In fact, I have been recommending this to people in my real life. Though I am interested now to see how the series works and what the first book in the series is called, and if there is multiples in this series. So if you have read the Charhill series by Lisa Jackson, please let me know down in the comments your thoughts and feelings on it. But this book was part of my Advent calendar. This was book 4 in my Advent calendar, and unfortunately, spoiler, but this was the last book I managed to get through that was part of my Advent calendar project. So I've only managed to read 4 books in that project, in that challenge for this year. But I did give this book 4 stars, and I would highly recommend it. Then I actually read R.L. Stine's Goosebumps, the graphic novel. This is The Haunted Mask. If you are a Goosebumps fan, you would have definitely previously read The Haunted Mask or seen the television series. Well, this is the graphic novel version. And I was a massive Goosebumps fan, so I just couldn't look over this book. The story does veer slightly different from the original book and also the TV series, but overall I really did enjoy it. The graphics are really well done, if you can see there, and you can really see how the story transpires and get the real feeling of horror and feel that the original story had in it. If you are a Goosebumps fan, I would definitely recommend giving this book a try, and I would be interested in reading any other adaptations of Goosebumps books. I did give this one 3 stars, and it didn't go to any other of my reading challenges. And then I read another graphic novel. This was Heartstoppers Volume 5 by Alice Osman. So this book follows Nick and Charlie, who are falling in love. However, they are getting towards the end of their high school years, and Nick is looking to head off to university. I don't want to give too many spoilers away for the previous books in this series, but it does deal with a lot of different issues, such as mental health and eating disorders, as well as I guess coming of age issues such as university, sleeping over your partner's house. Also other intimate things are brought up in this book. So it is definitely a coming of age story, and I am really enjoying it. However, out of the 5 books so far, I would say that this is probably one of my least favorite. I didn't enjoy this one as much as I have the other ones, and I think it's because there were certain behaviors throughout the book that I felt were a bit rushed, especially in relation to communication between family members, including communication between both Nick and Charlie. I think a lot of the angst that was in this book really could have been sidelined or not occurred if either Nick or Charlie had really communicated better early on in the book. Though obviously that is probably an issue that we face with coming of age, is learning when and how to communicate, especially in committed romantic intimate relationships. Though I guess they then never touched on the fact that their communication was so poor. So I also gave this book 3 stars, and this one also went to my Colour Me Reading challenge for the colour pastel orange because of the title colour and the colour of the stars. They're all pastel orange. And then I read one more graphic novel. This is Firefly, Legacy Edition Book 1. It is actually the first 3 books in the Serenity series. This is by Zach Whedon and Brett Matthews. And obviously it is set within Joss Whedon's Firefly universe. And it covers a lot of different stories within this universe. So you bounce between different chapters, slightly different art forms through different illustrators. And it does bounce a lot between timelines, which is something I find happens quite a lot in these style of graphic novels. I find that they don't so clearly follow a timeline as physical books do or television series or movies do. It does bounce around quite a lot. That is something I also found with the Buffy the Vampire Slayer graphic novel I read. I think it was earlier this year. I also find sometimes as well that graphic novels give the authors abilities to basically AU a universe. So alternative universe, a universe. And I will say that though I don't think that specifically happens in this book, it just seems a lot more like it touches on more details than we were given in the original series and movie. I will say the thing that really won me over for this book and left me talking about it for days was the section where it gives you the shepherd's tale. So this is Shepherd Book's story. We learn about how he became the person he is, and I am not going to give spoilers, but for anyone who watched the series or the movie and want to know how a shepherd ended up on the Firefly on Serenity, then you definitely need to read this book because it is a really interesting backstory, and I am pretty sure that this is classed as canon. So if you are a Firefly fan, I would 100% recommend reading this book, and I did give it 4 stars. I also included this as the color bottle green because of these curtains right here as part of my Colour Me Reading challenge. So definitely read this one. I then listened via audiobook to the 4th book in the Camper and Criminals series. I once again didn't really realize it was a part of a larger series when I started reading it. However, I guess that is kind of obvious in the book now that I'm aware of that. This one was called Christmas, Criminals and Campers, and it's by Tonya Capers. And to be honest, this was a 2-star, would not recommend read for me. I had been watching some YouTube channels where they were talking about Christmas cozy mysteries being one thing that they love to read in the Christmas period. And it got me kind of excited for that feel, which is why I picked up this book via audiobook. And I don't know if it would have been better if I read it in person. Well, no, I know that it wouldn't have been better, but the narrator was potentially not the best. It wasn't something that I really picked up on overall. It was slightly annoying, but it wasn't one of those things that overly made me want to DNF it, because I am not from Kentucky. However, I have gone to listen to an audiobook once that had a supposed Australian character in it, And listening to the audiobook and the narrator's terrible accent made me definitely jump off that very quickly. And reading some of the Goodreads reviews on this book, the narrator did make a few people who were from the Kentucky area feel the same way. So I don't think the accents were that well done in the book. However, if that was the only issue, it probably wouldn't have been too bad for me personally. But to be honest, I did not like the storyline at all. So the storyline follows what is called the Laundry Club. It is a group of people who meet for book club at a laundromat. And the main character of the story is Mae West, who has recently become owner of the Happy Trails campground in this small Kentucky town called Normal. It is very cliche in a lot of ways, but then famous author Nadine White wants to come and stay at the campground over the winter months to write their next book, and young librarian Abby Fawn is absolutely starstruck. This is where it gets slightly unbelievable for me because, as you may be aware, I am a librarian, and as a librarian, I am very well aware of the fact that there are things called ghostwriters. And yes, it may be disappointing to find out that one of your favorite author has a ghostwriter who assists them in writing the book. I probably would not be as devastated as Abby Fawn is, to the point of calling this woman a fraud and a fake. As you have probably already guessed it, Nadine White inevitably ends up murdered, and we spend the rest of the book running around with Mae West as she tries to prove that there's no way Abby Fawn could have done it. I really do enjoy a whodunit. I'm a big fan of Agatha Christie, but I think the thing that sets those books apart is the fact that if it wasn't for the likes of Miss Marple, for example, the police, the detectives would have never figured out what was happening. With this book, Mae West is almost unnecessary. The police get to the same conclusion without her. So it's almost like, what is the point of her doing what she's doing? And at times she is literally interfering with crime scenes and withholding information from police. So it is really strange that towards the end of the book, the police even say to her that they're going to get her on as kind of a consultant to assist with these things in the future. I have now been made aware that this is the 4th book in the series, and there's already been 3 murders before this one in this small town that Mae West has supposedly been helped solve. But I will just say I will not be going back and reading any of these or continuing with this series, as I just found, though the mystery was slightly interesting, there were enough plot points for me to pick up who was likely involved, and the fact that Mae West was almost superfluous to needs really just made the whole story feel unnecessary. So I did give this one 2 stars. However, from what I can tell from Goodreads, that my opinion is rather on the opposite to majority's opinion. The book overall nearly has an average of 4 stars rating, while I only gave it 2 stars. I think if you are into those quick whodunit style books, this one might definitely be right up your alley. I guess maybe these aren't really the books for me, and I was just wanting a little bit more vava voom And last but not least, I did read the 7th book in the Dragon Lords of Valdir series. This is by S.E. Smith and is the Twin Dragons book. In this book, we follow the Twin Dragons. They are two warriors named Kalo and Cree who are twins. And in this world, twins will lose their mind and their ability to control their dragons if they do not find their mate, their true mate at some point. And that true mate is generally has to be the same person. So this is a little bit of a why choose type book, and it is a little bit of a fun take on what's been happening so far in this series. So the main female character is Melina Franklin. She was abducted with her grandfather 4/5 years prior and has been kept on a mining camp on an asteroid that has been owned by an alien species called the Adrox, I think that's how it's said. And during that time, because of how they treat women, Melina has pretended to be a young mute boy. So as you can imagine, the twin dragons are very confused when they find themselves drawn to Melina, who they do not realize is female. The spice level of this book is quite up there. So the first half of this book is mostly about them being confused about what is happening and not yet discovering the truth about Melina, while the third quarter of the book is about them coming together as a triad, I guess. And the last quarter of the book is really when Melina really comes into herself and shows that she is strong enough to be the true mate of the twin dragons, and her dragon emerges fully. I wouldn't say that the Dragon Lords of Valdir are heavy literature or really even high level fantasy romance books, but they are quite easy to read and a lot of fun. And like most romance books, you really know it is going to have a happy ending, which is something I really enjoy. I am finding that although this book was really just a 3-star book for me, I am still really interested in continuing to read this series. I also did class this book towards my last colour on my Colour Me Reading challenge, which is olive yellow, and that is for this weird little yellow bit that's going on in the middle of the cover. And that's probably a bit of a stretch, but I was definitely going to be meeting my Colour Me Reading goal for this year. So those are all the books I have managed to read so far in 2024. We still have about a week or so left of this year, so there is potentially a chance that I could read another book. And I am currently reading the 5th book in my Advent Calendar Challenge, and that is Secrets of the Tulip Sisters by Suzanne Mallery. Though I am only about this much in, so about 20% into this book. So I am hesitant to think I'll have this done before the end of the year. However, I do have some driving to do, and there are a couple books that are on my Libby app. I'll put the pictures of those covers up here that I am considering to see if I can get through. If I do manage to get through any of those books, I will put it up on my Instagram, so make sure you are following along there, as well as my Goodreads, so make sure you are following along there as well. As this is my last Advent Calendar book edition video for 2024, I did want to take this moment to do a quick recap of my 2024 reading journey. So as you will see up here in relation to my Goodreads goal. I did have a goal of reading 35 books. Unfortunately, at this time of filming this video, I've only read 25. So I was 10 books off of my goal. But 25 is more books than I read last year. So I am happy to have reached that many. In relation to my Colour Me Reading challenge, that was created by myself and Samantha. I'll have Samantha linked down below. As you can see here, I did manage to read a book for each one of the colours. This challenge will be going on hiatus for the year 2025, though we will potentially be looking to bring it back in 2026. Like I said, I only managed to get through 4 of my Advent Calendar Book Edition books, which is rather disappointing, especially considering this whole video series was named after that challenge. Though I am interested in incorporating that style of reading selection into my TBR selection for 2026, as I am planning to do more of a TBR game style video monthly rather than what I have currently been doing. Please let me know down in the comments if there's any specific way you would like to see me conduct a TBR game for 2025. Well, I feel like I have been talking for a very long time, and this is a very long video, but please let me know down in the comments what you would like to see from my reading journey in 2025 and what your plans are for your reading journey in 2025. But until next time, I'm Verity. This is my finale for my Advent Calendar Book Edition. And now to the outro.